Welcome back to Rachel's Never Seen.
Yay.
Hey, everybody. Sorry it's been a bit of a hiatus for us, but, wedding got in the way, we had to get ready for that. So, just so you know, she still married me. So
I did.
Hey.
I did. I forgot my ring,
that.
so I meant to put my ring
I don't have my ring on either. There you go. We just both, recently showered, so we just haven't put them back on yet. So, that's all there is to it. We love each other. Okay. So, so weird. We decided to just go ahead and get right back into the swing of things and looking at some movies made right here in our hometown of Savannah, Georgia. And so we started with what is pretty much considered the Savannah movie, and that was Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil from 1997, directed by Clint Eastwood.
And just some background, you're a Savannah native.
I am.
I moved here from Ohio in 2015.
I think we said somewhere around there. Yeah.
So it's been 6-7 years that I've been here.
Right.
And I love it. I love Savannah, just for the record. I never want to live anywhere else.
Just for the record.
Just for the record. But I don't remember. I had a point to make after that. Oh, I've read the book. I have read the book.
She's read the book. I have not read the book, as we've gone over on this many times. I don't read. So
it was a couple of years ago that I did read it, so my memory's a little bit fuzzy, but I know that I did read the book.
Very good. And as you can see in this film, it is different from the book. But unlike the book, it's trying to tell a very complicated story in as simple as way as possible. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, because the old adage is the people who read the book hate this film, and the people who have watched the movie don't like the book. And I think it's because they are vastly different in the way they present this story.
I mean, that's to be expected with all movies. I'll admit, when I was growing up, I was real big into Harry Potter, and I would read the books, reread the books even before the movies came out. Mm-hmm. And I was that person in the movie theater who was like, oh, that's not how they did it, blah, blah, blah. But then now I'm older, and I like to think I've matured some. I'm like, okay, well, obviously they can't fit everything into a movie.
Right.
It would be 8 hours long, some of these books.
It'd be ridiculous. Yeah.
So there had to be some liberties and some creative. So long as you tell the story in mostly the same way. They did change some names, I noticed in here.
Yes.
Left out a few details. But one of them I would say was important. I wish they would have done I don't know if that would be even feasible, that disclaimer at the end. In reality, there were 4 trials and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I feel like that's relevant. But
right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, well, once again, you better have at least seen this film if you're watching this. Come on now.
Okay, I know.
So, here we go. Going into Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, filmed right here in lovely Savannah, Georgia, 1997. Clint Eastwood, John Cusack, not his sister Joan, Kevin Spacey, a young Jude Law, which was always fun to see
him. Oh yeah, he's always fun to see.
Yeah.
I like young Jude Law.
So young Jude Law, and several other kind of character actors you may have seen in some things here and there, or not, but nonetheless, these bunch of good character actors in this movie. So, how's it fit for you? What you got?
So this was set in the 80s, correct?
I believe it's either late 1981, early 1982. I think.
Okay.
I think that changeover because it's a Christmas party that he's
Yes.
come down the cover. So I think that's what it is. Christmas 81 to
New Year's 82.
New Year's 82.
Gotcha.
I believe.
I would have loved to have seen what Savannah was like in that era. There were definite small town vibes, which I grew up in a town of 1,000 people. Well. So, I get that. You couldn't really get away with anything. Everyone knew who you are, or at least who you're related to.
Right.
But, I don't know. And having lived downtown for about a year and having explored downtown extensively during that year, it was fun for me to see, all the there are just different residential places that I'm like, hey, I know where that is. You know?
Right. Yeah.
It was really fun
that stays off the tourist path.
Yes.
Yes. The residential squares and stuff like that. From my understanding, my family moved here in 1980. it's 7 or 9, one of the two.
Right. I say you're a native, but
no, I grew up
here. Yeah.
I want to say they moved here in 87 because I want to say I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
So I want to say we moved here in 87. So, I mean, yeah, Savannah is home. It's always going to be home. So, I mean, but we didn't really go downtown growing up. Well, so I didn't really have a knowledge of what like downtown looked like and what it was like until I got older, you know.
From what I hear, downtown Savannah wasn't much of anything back then. And reading on Wikipedia after we watched this, it seemed like this book was a big catalyst for the tourist industry.
Correct. Yeah. So the sensation of the story alone, you know, especially in the South where, you know, in the 80s, you know, they're still, you know, people would still frown upon homosexuality and stuff like that down here. And they, you know, that scandal of this very well-known man shooting a boy who was, say boy, I mean, he was obviously in his, he was like 21 or something, 20 or 21, 20s, yeah. But shooting and killing this, what he was a well-known male prostitute. Mm-hmm. So there's the scandal of that alone, and then tie in the fact that they were lovers and stuff like that.
Right.
It kind of brought in the gothic South almost of Savannah, and there became this kind of romance of that, you know, of, I don't even want to call it an era, but you know what I mean, of that kind of like that period of like this, you know, things were still questioned. There's still somewhat of a segregation, but we're not really segregated. We just have black people who are our servants.
Yeah, I know that was a big thing, and they're all like very stereotypical.
Yeah.
Servants too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, but, absolutely. Like there was that kind of
deference.
That was still a thing.
Yeah,
that was still very much a thing. And I think there's a romanticized, you know, feeling towards that. Like it gives like this feeling of like the South is untouched by time.
Right, like a nostalgia feeling almost.
And this kind of showed that, you know, we can have a New York scandal right here in Savannah, Georgia.
Since I've moved here, I've always felt like Savannah was kind of, you know, how Austin has the keep Austin weird thing. I've always felt like Savannah had that type of vibe also. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's because the type of people that it attracts with SCAD and the artistic community, but I don't know. I've always got that feeling here that we're just a bunch of weirdos.
Yeah, so and one of the best compliments I've ever heard of this city was an interview with the comedian Bobcat Goldthwait. He said,
"Wait, what did you just say?"
Bobcat Goldthwait.
No, before that.
He's a comedian.
The comedian Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yes.
I don't know what I heard, but it was just like all one big word running. I'm like, what? Okay, carry
on. He was here for the film festival, Savannah Film Festival, and he said, someone asked him, what do you think of Savannah? And his first reaction was, yeah, and it was kind of funny because everyone's always, oh, it's so beautiful.
Right.
And he just, and he's like, no, really. He's like, I love Savannah. He's like, the thing I love about Savannah is you embrace your kooks.
Yeah.
And that is 100% Savannah. Yeah. So, you know, Savannah's always been that way. And so this book, as well as the movie, kind of reintroduced the kooks, that people would have these weird characters down here. And I really believe that the tourists who come down here, one, especially if it's book specific, they come down here to see the architecture, see all the moss, see all the beautiful thing, and then they're just like, where's the guy walking around with the flies tied to him? Where's the guy walking the dog with, you know, the dog leash with no dog? Yeah. And I'm like, not real. Like, they're not really real. There wasn't a guy who actually did those things, but the character is 100% would be somebody who lived in this setting.
Right.
Absolutely would.
The closest you'll get to that is the Savannah for Morons tour. So
yes,
shameless plug.
Shameless plug for those good people.
It was great.
You'll love them. If y'all come down here and visit, take the Savannah for Morons trolley tour.
Yeah.
It is awesome. It is absolutely awesome. All right, what you got?
So going back to kind of what we were talking about with the servants in the household and stuff, all of the accents in the movie are just kind of ridiculous.
It's the Hollywood Southern accent. Everybody is so refined here in Savannah.
I mean,
it's awful.
It's bad.
It's so awful. And I gotta imagine people from like Boston and New York hate hearing some sort of thick, like, and maybe to them it's the hick version of their accent. In the South, you either get refined Southern talk, or you get some sort of country like this.
Well, that sounds like an Ohio accent.
Oh, yeah. There could be. Yeah.
Anyways,
to me, the Ohio floods a little into, like, the Canadian accent.
Okay, yeah.
You know, especially, like, more closer, I guess, maybe to, like, Wisconsin and Minnesota kind of accents.
Midwest or whatever you want to call them.
But, yeah, that's the stereotypical Southern. There's very few actual Southern people who speak in that refined talk.
Very few.
Very few. And the few that do, you can tell if it's legit or not. You can look at them and the way they say, you can tell whether it's forced or if that's just genuinely the way they talk. And there's a few of them that's it. I don't know if they went to
my landlord was one of those people.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, my old landlord, she had a nice Southern accent. Speaking of kooks, Lady Chablis.
Lady Chablis, very celebrated kook here in town.
She looked like she was just having the time of her life throughout this whole entire movie.
I read some of the trivia stuff on there, and you know, like Clint Eastwood initially, they put her up in a hotel while she was
the Holiday Inn. I just read that.
Yeah, and it was in the Holiday Inn, and she was like, just like, Clint, sweetie, this ain't gonna be good enough for the doll. This ain't got enough room for all my luggage that I'm bringing and all this. She lived here, and she still packed everything she owned to do this. And Clint apologized to her and put her up in one of the bigger bread and breakfast hotels here in town. But Clint loved her because she was a one-take wonder to him. Mm-hmm. Because she didn't so much have to act, even though in her own right she was an actress.
Right.
She didn't really have to act. She lived this, so she just put her own flavor.
I think that was just part of her personality. Yeah. That's who she was.
Put her own flavor on these lines and just went and did her thing. And I swear, when you watch that movie, you can see her when she's just kind of doing an improv rant, kind of. That there's a lot of people trying not to like lose it right around her because she is just so funny about it. She's so naturally funny.
Yeah.
Yes.
She only recently passed away, didn't she?
She did. I want to say
it's only like 3-4 years. It's been since I lived in Savannah.
I believe I was working over at the TV station at the time, so I would say probably in the at least in the last 5 years, maybe in the last like 3, like 2019, 2018, 19, 20, somewhere in there. Wasn't last year, but like somewhere in there.
Right.
But yeah, very recently.
How long did she perform? Like up to her
She still
death?
performed at Club 1 in Savannah. She would perform, I think, at least once a month, if not every other month. Okay. She would do a show there because she was getting older. She was getting sicker.
I know.
And she couldn't perform as often as she wanted to. But she would at least, I think it was at least once a month she would do a performance at Club 1. And the tickets were very hard to come by.
Oh, I'm sure they were.
Yeah.
I am sure they were.
She always did a big St. Patrick's show. That was her March show, was a big St. Patrick's Day show.
Yeah. So, during the trial, Jim Kelso, the writer, is the first one that Jim tells the truth to, that he lied.
Correct.
Why was he so upset about that? Like, was it just his impersonal investment in the case? Like, how he's gotten to know these people and he's come to care for them?
Why was Kelso upset about it?
Yeah, why was the author?
I think because Kelso, over time, genuinely believed Jim and his story, and that Jim would not lie to him.
Okay.
And I think it's a betrayal of trust.
Okay.
And I think when Jim, both literally and figuratively, got that get out of jail free card with the the handbagging loophole.
Yeah.
When he got that, and then he chose to stick with his story, that he felt, I feel like he felt heartbroken and betrayed.
Okay.
That this man that he actually held up, I think, to a certain standard,
Yeah,
decided to continue his lie.
He's got a decent, like,
and he
he
saw
wasn't,
him in a different
he's
light
new
now.
money, nouveau riche, whatever he said. I can't speak French. But okay, side tangent. One time I downloaded Duolingo and I tried to speak French, and I was going through my lesson, and the first lesson, they have the voice ones, and they're like, repeat this, blah, blah, blah. And there's like, we didn't recognize that. Try again. And I would try again. And it was like, that's not correct. Try again. And I felt like Joey and Friends trying to learn French from Phoebe. And he's like, blah, blah, blah. So, so that was my next thing that I wrote down. It was hard for me to gauge his reaction during Jim's testimony. Yeah. Testimony? Yeah.
Yeah. I think he felt betrayed. And then I think he could only see Jim in a different light,
right?
Now, as a guilty man, who killed somebody in what he feels like is now cold blood instead of self-defense.
Yeah. Okay. So he would only testify if his mom was not in the courtroom.
About his homosexuality.
About his homosexuality.
Yes.
So they did cutaway shots to her, but it seemed like she could still hear.
I think she could absolutely hear.
Okay.
By the way, the courthouse in that is way nicer than any courthouse we've got in our city. I'm just tell you that right now. They built a nice set for that wherever they built it. I don't know if they built it in town or if they built it in Burbank, but they built a nice set.
The prosecuting lawyer, he looks familiar to me.
Bob Gunton, yes, he's a character actor. Gotcha. Usually plays a more villainous kind of role, and I guess technically he's kind of a villain in this, as he's the opposing attorney. But he usually plays those kinds of roles where has to be somebody who's very well educated, and is generally kind of heinous in some way. Bob Gunton is his name. He's a wonderful character actor. He's a character actor I've always wanted to actually sit down and talk to and interview because he just fascinates me. Yeah.
I of course have to point out that they had the live trucks from WTOC,
yes,
WSAV.
Yeah,
I had a shot of those, and that was interesting to me. They're like, hey, how does that work? They call, be like, hey, can we call the chief engineer or whatever, and be like, hey, can we?
Or just the
I
GM.
could do that. I could drive. I could do that. If someone asked for a movie in live trucks, I could drive one down there.
Correct.
I am the most senior engineer, and I would be number one.
This is true. You could sit there and you would just probably set it up or half-ass set it up because they probably don't need the mast fully erect. So you could just
pretend like you're working.
Make it look like it is, and then and they would be good with that.
What if I got to meet someone?
You might. You never know.
I know.
That stuff comes around.
Okay. So now that's all my notes during the movie.
Okay.
I have a couple of things. I read the Wikipedia.
Yeah, it's very interesting to read that and see.
Oh no, there were more trials. So we touched on it in the movie. There end up being 4 trials.
There were 4 trials. So what really happened? Obviously, the film only shows you one trial, and they essentially condensed all of it down to one trial. Jim Williams was tried 4 times. He was convicted twice, but both those convictions were overturned on appeal. From some odd technicality that they found. I mean, he had good lawyers, He had a different lawyer for his first trial, and then Sonny Seiler was his lawyer for the subsequent 3 trials.
And the actual Sonny Seiler played the judge.
In the film, correct.
And he is actually the breeder of the Uga line of dogs. Okay.
From the University of Georgia, absolutely. The Uga in the movie is Uga 5, portraying his father, Uga 4. So, Jim Williams was convicted the first time in Savannah, then was overturned on appeals. A new trial was set. He was convicted again, and it was overturned again on appeal. And then a third trial happened, and it was declared a mistrial because it was a hung jury. There was one juror,
one person who was adamant that there was not beyond reasonable doubt or whatever.
Correct. And then for the 4th trial, they actually got to change a venue to Augusta, which they felt really helped his case because they felt like he was being persecuted for his homosexuality in Savannah. So they were able to move it to Augusta, where he then was acquitted in Augusta and then died
like 8
6
months
months or something later.
wasn't too
Yeah,
far
after later. Yeah, he
I guess
died.
it confused me because it is a record number of trials
Oh
for
yeah,
Georgia.
for the state, absolutely.
I guess it seems like double jeopardy to me, but if it was an appeal, mistrial, and then finally an acquittal, and then no appeal after that, then it wasn't fully resolved until the last one.
Correct.
So.
And you got to think those, and I could be speaking out of my ass here, but I think with the technicalities that got the appeals, one for him on the first two, were essentially like declaring another mistrial, and you have to retry
because
the case.
Evidence was corrupted.
Something happened along those lines. Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. It was interesting to me. The Wikipedia mentioned that for the parties, the Christmas parties, Clint Eastwood. That's who.
Yes, who directed
he actually sent out like engraved invitations to the people who normally receive those invitations because there were security concerns about filming it in the mansion because of all the antiques and paintings and stuff that were in there.
Yeah.
So it sounded like most of the extras in that party were actually prominent people in Savannah at that
Savannah
time.
socialites and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of them were. I tried to point some of them out when we were looking earlier.
You did.
The sheriff, longtime sheriff here until he passed away in the last 10 years or so. Al St. Lawrence was in there. He played the senator that he was talking to.
Right.
Jim Williams' sister, who still owns the house to this day and lives there. She's in there.
So is it open for tours or anything? Or
It
it's
is.
just a private? Oh,
no,
it is
the Mercer House. The Mercer House is open for tours. You can tour the. I think it's just the first floor. Where they've kind of recreated the study that was on the earlier floors, like where he shot, Billy or Danny, or whichever name it actually is. But wherever he shot him, and subsequently where he died, Jim himself.
Right.
They recreated that room up front. I've actually been in the house, not for a tour. I actually went there and did an interview with his sister. And then a couple of the other rooms you see in the party where Emma Kelly's playing the piano, that room is one you can go in. And then next to that where Kevin Spacey is, John Cusack's like realizes you have my book. And they talk about the book and that room you can go into as well. And then you have the carriage house in the back where supposedly Kelso stayed.
Right.
There is no Kelso, but that is where the gift shop and stuff is, where you can buy your memorabilia or whatever. And she lives up on the upper floors.
Okay. Gotcha.
Of the house.
The last thing I wrote down, it was mentioned that the real author of the book thought that Kevin Spacey played John Williams very poorly.
Right.
And it turns out that he thought it was because the audio or whatever he studied of him was from the trial when he was on Valium.
Yeah.
And he was slower speaking. I mean, for me, it's very hard for me sometimes to separate the art from the artist. So I'm just going to say that. Ignoring all the history of Kevin Spacey, he was, and obviously beside Lady Chablis, he was the standout role of the movie for me. Mm-hmm. I felt like he really embodied like the essence of what I imagine Jim Williams was like, very kind of intelligent and
it's kind of that suave.
Yeah, suave. I can't.
That very. It's really a Southern hustler kind of way of being. Especially, I mean, if you live in Savannah or have ever visited Savannah and you've met someone like Jim Williams, at least the way he's portrayed in this film, you never trust that person.
No, you can kind of see the mental clarity. Like you can kind of always see him
always
calculating in his head, like how does this work out best in my favor, almost.
Yes, that is exactly it. Like trying to think 3 or 4 moves ahead.
Yes.
As he's working through everything.
Yes.
My understanding is it was actually a fairly accurate portrayal.
Okay.
Is my understanding. And my understanding was that Kevin kind of method acted and kept his distance from people and stuff, and was kind of. But I've come to understand that may be just who he is anyway.
Yeah.
So overall, what's your takeaway from Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil?
I liked it a lot. I enjoyed it. I think you mentioned that during the movie you could kind of see that I was getting involved in the storyline and in the film. So overall, it gets an 8 from me.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
An 8. That's awesome. From a 2.5-hour movie that, unfortunately for us, the DVD decided to freeze up with an hour to go.
Yeah,
an hour to go. We had to pay for it on Amazon to finish the movie because I don't know what happened between the DVD and the player. They just said, we're done. We've had enough of this movie.
Yep.
So that was... but yeah, great. I'm glad you really liked it. Quick shout out to Minerva out there, who is a wonderful character too. I absolutely loved Minerva.
Would have loved to discuss her more, but time is a thing.
Exactly. But Minerva I thought was a fun character and had a lot of good little sayings and quips in there.
I always like the witchy kind of voodoo vibe stuff. I'm a woo woo person anyway, so like I liked her involvement.
Woo woo person.
Yeah, woo woo.
I just think of like woo girls and
which is a thing in Savannah.
Oh yeah, my office is right next to a well-traveled woo girl lane. So, all right, well, fantastic, baby. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us again, and we're back. We'll be back here for the next few weeks, pumping these movies out, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks.